Shall I get him to affirm?
Yes. Good morning, Shaykh Gabier. Just before you settle down.
Stand up again.
Oh, sure. Do that too.
No problem.
I'm gonna ask you to just make a solemn affirmation. It is necessary because what you will be telling us will go in on the record of the Commission's testimony and evidence. So I'm just going to ask you first to state your full names for the record.
My full name is Abdul Gabier.
Thank you very much.
I'm called Shaykh because I am a religious minister.
Thank you, Shaykh. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony that you're about to give shall be the truth, nothing but the truth?
I do, sir.
Thank you very much. You may be seated.
Thank you very much.
Shaykh, as we know, we are listening today to a number of cases which have arisen during, perhaps some just immediately prior to, and some subsequent to the march that was arranged in August of 1985. And in order to place that in a context which will be which we can understand and appreciate the testimonies given, we've asked you to come and to put that context before us, so that we are then able to follow the testimony that will be given of specific incidents better. So I'm going to ask you to do that and to take us through your submission in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First and foremost, before I do start, I would like to thank the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for giving me the opportunity to come here and testify. And I have a very bad memory. I'm getting old now. So I hope that whatever I'm saying here would be of benefit for us and for those who come in the future, our children.
Take your time, Sheikh. There's no problem.
Was a crucial year in the struggle to bring about a just change to South Africa. You know, I promised myself I wasn't going to cry. But what we have gone through, it's impossible not to be emotional and not to cry. Our generations in the future will only appreciate the difficulties and the struggle and the sacrifices which was made by this generation, if they understand truly and clearly what had happened to us through our history. But 1985 was a crucial year in the struggle to bring about this just change to South Africa. Mr. P.W. Botha, the illegal president of the time, refused to acknowledge that the rule and his rule of racialism would come to an end. He and his regime misread the widespread unrest in the country. They believed nothing was happening. I suppose it was because the white people were not affected at the time. He also misjudged the impact the United Democratic Front had on the oppressed people of South Africa, and that the leadership of the UDF were the two representatives of the oppressed people in the country at the time. The regime also miscalculated the strength and determination of the people and its leadership in its fight against the evil of apartheid. For people who claimed to be civilized, humane, religious and intelligent, one could say today that they were not civilized, not humane, nor religious, nor intelligent, but stupid and arrogant. We knew that whatever is held by force could only be taken by forceful means, and that the racists will resist all changes until their pockets, their stomachs, or their lives were threatened. The ANC, the vanguard of the struggle, was waging a war outside the country and inside the country against this illegal regime, engaging them on the battlefield and on the diplomatic front and all the other international forums. More and more countries were calling for sanctions to isolate this naughty and illegitimate regime from the civilized world family. The regime on the other side intensified its violence against the oppressed people. So many people were killed innocently, and so many were maimed, so many were forced to go underground, and many went into exile. At this time, a lovely song was introduced by the greatest artists in their time. We are the world. We are the children. We are the ones who make a better world, and we believe that we, the oppressed people, are part of that, of those who would be able to make a difference and produce a better world. It was in this atmosphere that Dr. Alan Buzak, my colleague and comrade, to whom I have a great respect, called me to a press conference in Bellville to announce on behalf of the Muslims that the oppressed people of South Africa have had enough and demanded the immediate release of President Mandela and all other political prisoners. Also that the oppressed people would be marching to Pollsmoor to secure the release of Nelson Mandela. The 28th of August was our date. The starting point of our gathering was the Athlone Stadium. 3 days before the march, the government arrested Dr. Alan Buzak, and we, the Muslims, on the 27th of August celebrated our Eid al-Adha, our holy day, and I announced in the mosque to my congregation in Kensington that the march would carry on as planned. On the 28th of August 1985, the regime sent out its army and its police and surrounded the Athlone Stadium in the early hours of the morning, and forcibly dispersed anybody or any gatherings in that particular area. All those who stood in Klipfontein Road near the stadium were chased away. Those who refused to disperse were arrested. This doesn't tell the whole story either, because anybody who just stood on the corners were baton charged and were beaten up. And some of my colleagues who were later on arrested tried to speak to the police to give them an opportunity just to address the people, to ask them to move on. This was refused. Instead of allowing them just to speak to their own people, they were all picked up and arrested and taken to the Athlone police station. Of those who were arrested in Klipfontein Road, a good old friend, Dr. Richard Stevens, and the man who slept next to me in the cell later on, Reverend Abel Hendrikse, who was the former head of the Southern Africa Methodist Church. They had no regard whatsoever to religious people either. And this was a new phenomenon which never existed in South Africa before. Religious people were always a protected lot and a respected lot. At about 10 a.m. I was told that a group of protesters were gathering at Hewitt Training College. On my arrival, I found a strong group of people with a very strong presence of the clergy, of the religious people. And to me it was clear that the religious people of this country was going to make a very strong statement. I was determined to be part of that statement. Disregard what had happened, what would happen. The majority of the people in that march on the day had never seen Mr. Nelson Mandela. Yet they were prepared to be beaten up, to be jailed, or even die, because it was what Mandela symbolized the freedom, the equality, justice, and it symbolized what they stood for and what he stood for, and that was what was important. As the crowd grew, a helicopter hovered over the area and kept a close watch on the crowd. A few speeches was delivered by various people stating the conditions of the country, what the regime was doing, and the violence perpetrated against the people. That one of the speakers mentioned the importance of the march and why it should continue, why we should continue with it. We decided to march 5 in a row. As we marched out of the grounds of the Hewitt College into Krombroom Road, a comrade next to me asked me what I thought where the police were and where would they stop us. My reply was, I don't think the police were too far away. As we approached Grosmere Avenue, the police appeared in Caspers and in police trucks and ordered us to stop the march and disperse. The Reverend David Russell ordered us to kneel down and pray. This we all did collectively. He then tried to speak to the officer in command, who refused to entertain him. The officer spoke over a loudspeaker saying that this was an illegal gathering, and if you do not disperse, in 3 minutes action will be taken. We stood up, hands in hand, refusing to move away or disperse, and the police then baton charged us. Nobody was spared. From the police, from the violence of the police, children, women, old people were all beaten. And And those who were part of the march had to run for their lives down Kromboom Road into Thornton Road in all directions. As tear gas and canisters and all sorts of ammunition used by the regime at the time, rubber bullets flew in all directions. We, the clergy, who formed the front lines of the march, were all arrested. And we were extremely saddened to hear that so many people got hurt, and that one of our comrades who is sitting here this morning, Reverend Jan de Waal, had been injured and lost his eye. We were taken to the Athlone police station, where we were locked up for the night. That was about somewhere around about 2 p.m. We were taken to a cell not good enough for an animal to be in. We were asking for water, for something to eat from 2 p.m. until the following morning, 8 a.m. We were not given a glass of water or anything to eat. The conditions within the cell was in itself a humiliation. We were locked up for the night. All those who were in the cell with me were all from the religious fraternity, from the Western Province Council of Churches, representing the churches of the Cape Province, and I was then the chairman of the Muslim Judicial Council. When I was a youngster, as a student in the Azhar University in Cairo, Egypt, studying Islam, become a religious man, I never ever dreamt that I would ever land in jail. I'm sure that my colleagues who were with me in the cell were all religious people. When they studied their religion, Christianity, to become religious people, I'm sure they never ever dreamed that they would also land in jail, because jail is for criminals, for murderers, for thieves, drug lords, frauds, those kind of people. We never robbed, we never killed. All we were asking for was for our rights which we were born with as human beings: justice, equality, and freedom. This, in that particular time, as far as that illegal regime, was a crime. As we stayed in the cell until the following morning, as I've mentioned, we were denied all our rights. We had nothing to eat or to drink. On the following day, we were driven to the Wynberg court. The judge there refused us bail and transferred us to the Polsmoor jail. This in itself is a story of its own. I'm not going to indulge in that. All that I can say is that for people who claim to be religious people, to treat their religious people the way we were treated, was an insult to religion itself. The judge found it necessary to have us locked up for 7 days, and we, 40 clergy, 40 people of religious standing, were all locked up in a cell. One incident that happened. In one of the evenings, the cell was locked. When the warders came the following morning, the lock was open, the door was open. And we are all until today trying to figure out who opened the door. Who opened that cell? Who opened the cell of 45 religious people who were doing nothing else but asking for the rights of which they were born with, and asking for the rights of all the people of South Africa to be restored. We encouraged each other, we pacified each other, and we learned from the experiences of one another. And in the middle of, I used to, as somebody who is maybe just a little bit more sensitive than many others, I'm a little bit of an emotional guy. I used to stand up in the middle of the night and pray and burst out crying, not because of fear, but because of the injustice. Ons plek is nie in die tronke in nie. Ons plekke is in die moskies en in die kerke en om mens te leer en mens leiding te gee, nie in die tronke in nie. And for that I felt great humiliation. I felt that it was a great insult to all of us that we should have gone through this particular experience. But the experience on the other side made us understand and appreciate the sacrifices, the great sacrifices made by men like Mr. Mandela, Sisulu, Mbeki, Mr. Katrada, and many others, the unknown warrior, the unknown soldier, the unknown one who has also sacrificed his life, hidden far away in one of the darknesses of those dungeons and cells, will never be known, but who have contributed tremendously so that we could have this change in our country. As far as the march was concerned, we believe that the march was a great success and it served its purpose. Although people lost their lives, we understand that lots of unrest took place in the township subsequently to this march, in the Cape area and also in Soweto. Some people lost their lives in the process. Some were injured, some were jailed, and some had to run for their lives out of the country. But the march drew the attention of the world. The arrest of the clergy, as normally arrogant people always make major mistakes. The regime being as arrogant as it was to arrest clergy, was condemned worldwide, and South Africa was never the same again. The rand dropped tremendously. Further, more countries imposed sanctions against South Africa, and the resistance inside the country intensified. The ANC became stronger and stronger internationally, and the oppressed people made sure that South Africa was ungovernable. Today, we sit here and speak as free people in a country where the Constitution grants every citizen his rights, and as an equal citizen amongst equals, let us never forget those who died in the process and those who contributed to the struggle bravely. I salute them all. It was a job well done, and I am proud to have been there amongst them. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Shaykh Gabier. I just want to find out from my colleagues whether they would want to ask you anything. Glenda Wolskut.
Morning, Shaykh.
Morning.
Perhaps just a few questions of clarity and perhaps just to corroborate some of the information that we have and try and check it out with you. The march on the 26th of August started at Athlone Stadium, that was the meeting place.
Yes.
On the 28th of August.
Yes.
28th of August. And at that gathering, people were baton charged, and there was unrest as a result of police action at the Athlone Stadium. Did people move from Athlone Stadium to Hewitt Training College, or do you think that people began to gather at Hewitt Training College as well?
Yeah. What happened at first? The people came to the Athlone Stadium as been planned. That was the gathering point, and because the police had surrounded the Athlone Stadium and chased everybody away and beat up everybody who gave some idea of coming together for the march. They then, but we are talking now of something which it was totally out of order. We're speaking of real violence. People were chased and kicked and all sorts of things in Klipfontein Road. And because there were some of the comrades who were stationed on the corners there, they were all picked up. Men like Abel Hendricks and also Dr. Stevens, they were picked up in Klipfontein Road, amongst many others. Then some gatherings some people were trying to gather at other areas as well. But the one area that became the successful area was in the grounds of Hewitt College, where everybody somehow or other got a message. And I suppose they watched the helicopter and they knew where the helicopter is, there is where the gathering would be. And that is where somewhere around about 4,000, 3,000 to 4,000, could be more, could be less. But in that particular numbers gathered at the Hewitt College. We organized ourselves well under the circumstances, and from there we marched out to Paulsmoor.
The date of the Paulsmoor March was during the state of emergency. Was there a state of emergency in the Western Cape at that
Yes,
time?
yes. I reckon, if I'm not mistaken, I was informed, and my memory was refreshed, because the state of emergency was declared a few days after this particular march, if not immediately after the march, but we reckon that it was the result of this particular march. But the RAN went down very, very, very quickly.
Just with regard to the numbers of people you expected to have at that march, can you give us an idea of how many people you expected to march to Paulsmoor?
Well, we have spread the word as wide as possible through the churches and through the mosques and through all other anti-apartheid organizations, and we reckon that if the march was allowed to excuse me, if the march was allowed to march as free as it should have been, we reckon that nothing less than 40 to 50,000 people would have been there easily, if not more. But that would have been the kind of figure, and that would have, I suppose, would have made the necessary impact, and it would have been a good message to send to those who were in jail that we are with them all the time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Shaykh, it just remains for me to thank you for coming and to take us back to those days, those dark days, and for reminding us so vividly what people had gone through and what sacrifices were made in order for us to speak as free people, as you had put it. In fact, it is very hard, even now, very soon after that incident, to think that what is recorded or accepted as internationally as part of basic human rights, the freedom of expression through mass action, protest action, that sort of conduct is criminalized, and it turned into quite a remarkable tragedy in the end. But it is necessary for us to record those incidents, painful as they might be, so that, first of all, it is on record, and secondly, to ensure that we avoid a repetition of that sort of nightmare, and to ensure that those who come after us will be spared that sort of lot. But thank you very much for the context and for having taken us through what happened on that particular day. We appreciate it
Thank you
very
very
much.
much, sir. I just want to last say that you know, there were so much beautiful songs that we sang at the time, and I believe that the reconciliation, the Truth and the Reconciliation Commission should make an effort to have these songs recorded, so that our children must sing them as they go along and in the future. Songs like Zinzanina, Zinzad, it had a wonderful effect on all of us. We will overcome someday. It played a role, and these are the kind of, although I'm a religious man, we're not so much good in sing, but it had a good effect, and it should be remembered and should be repeated on the tongues and the hearts of our children in the future. Thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you, Sheikh.